This wasn't supposed to leak, not like this, not 5 minutes ago, not with the palace still pretending everything is under control. Because what just exploded isn't just a legal update, it's a quiet detonation aimed straight at the heart of royal power. And the most dangerous part is this. For years, one story was told, one version repeated, one narrative enforced, and now, in a single cold confirmation, it's all unraveling. The crown looked untouchable, the vault looked sealed, the king looked certain. But certainty is a fragile illusion when paper trails start whispering louder than loyalty. And today, those whispers turned into something far louder. Because at exactly the moment no one expected, Edward's legal team didn't just speak, they confirmed. Calmly, precisely, almost too precisely. And what they confirmed? It cut straight through years of carefully managed silence. For years, there were murmurs, small ones at first, about inheritance structures, about reorganization, about modernization of royal assets. Words that sounded harmless, technical, necessary. But those words were never just words. They were shields, distractions, cover. Because behind those polished phrases, something far more deliberate was unfolding. Something that now looks less like administration and more like control. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because the confirmation doesn't just say Edward inherits, it implies something even bigger. That what was claimed for years may never have been entirely true to begin with. That what was presented as settled wasn't settled. That what looked like authority may have been assumption dressed as fact. And suddenly, the timeline doesn't feel clean anymore. It feels engineered, piece by piece, decision by decision, quietly, strategically, until no one thought to question it, but someone did. And that's where the story turns. Because while everything on the surface looked stable, ceremonies, appearances, carefully timed statements, beneath it, there was movement, silent movement, legal reviews, document cross-checks, old instructions being pulled back into the light, not dramatic, not loud, just persistent. The kind of persistence that doesn't seek attention, because it's building something much more dangerous than noise. It's building proof. And proof doesn't shout, it waits. For 18 months, that waiting turned into watching. And that watching turned into something sharper. Analysis, patterns, irregularities, small inconsistencies that on their own meant nothing, but together, they started forming a shape no one in the palace wanted to acknowledge. Because acknowledging it meant admitting something had gone too far, that lines had been crossed, quietly, repeatedly, confidently, and then came today. The confirmation didn't arrive with chaos. That's what makes it unsettling. It arrived with control, with legal clarity, with that chilling tone of finality that only comes when everything has already been checked, verified, locked into place. Edward's lawyers didn't argue, they stated. They didn't speculate, they confirmed. And confirmation is dangerous because it doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for approval. It simply exists. So now the question isn't just what Edward inherits. The question is why this had to be confirmed at all. Because if everything had been as clear as it was presented, there would be nothing to confirm. No need for legal reinforcement. No need for timing this precise. No need for stepping forward now, of all moments. And yet, here it is, which means something shifted. Something forced this out of the shadows and into the open. And the palace? It feels it. You can almost sense the silence tightening. Not the calm kind of silence, the kind that feels heavy, suspicious. The kind where no one speaks because everyone is waiting to see who speaks first. Because once that happens, there's no going back. And right now, that silence is sitting right in the middle of everything, stretching across corridors, across relationships, across decisions that once felt untouchable. Because this isn't just about inheritance, it's about narrative control. It's about who got to decide what was true, and for how long. And more importantly, who didn't. Because Edward's confirmation doesn't just clarify the future, it quietly questions the past. Every claim, every assumption, every moment where something was presented as final when it might have still been negotiable, or worse, manipulated. And if that's true, even partially, then this isn't a small correction. It's a crack, a precise, deliberate crack running through something that was supposed to look unbreakable. And here's the part no one is saying out loud yet, but everyone is thinking, if this one claim needed to be corrected, how many others are still sitting there, untouched, waiting? Because once one piece moves, the rest don't stay still. They never do. And tonight, behind closed doors, with documents being revisited and conversations happening in tones no one outside will ever hear, one thing is becoming impossible to ignore. This didn't end with that confirmation. That was just the moment it became visible. The real story, it's still unfolding. The moment the confirmation landed, it didn't didn't echo, it settled, like dust after something heavy had just hit the floor, and suddenly everyone could see what had been floating in the air all along, because this wasn't just a legal statement, it was a shift in gravity. The kind that doesn't shake walls immediately, but slowly pulls everything out of alignment. And inside those palace rooms where power used to move in straight, predictable lines, something has started to bend, quietly, uneasily, permanently, because now people are rereading everything, every decision, every signed paper, every final arrangement that was never supposed to be questioned. And what they're finding isn't chaos, it's something far more dangerous. Patterns. Repeated patterns. The same logic applied again and again, the same justification whispered into place, the same assumption that authority would be enough to make it real. But authority has limits, legal ones, structural ones. And when those limits are crossed too many times, they don't just snap back, they expose. And exposure is where things start to fall apart. Because what Edward's lawyers confirmed doesn't just stand alone, it connects. It links back to months of quiet financial movement, to internal adjustments that were explained as necessary, to decisions that seemed administrative but now feel intentional. And once those connections start forming, they don't stop. They spread fast, from one account to another, from one instruction to another, from one justification to another, until suddenly what looked like isolated actions begins to look like a system. A system someone believed was airtight. But airtight systems don't leave trails. And this one did. That's the detail that refuses to stay buried. The trail. The documented movement of wealth. The reallocation of assets. The bypassed permissions. The signatures that now don't feel as solid as they once did. Because when a legal team steps forward with certainty, it means they've already followed that trail to its end. They've mapped it, verified it, locked it into something that doesn't change just because someone wishes it would. And now, that trail is no longer private. Even if the documents aren't public yet, the reality of them is. The weight of them is. And inside the palace, that weight is being felt in ways no public statement could ever capture. Because it's not just about what was done, it's about who allowed it to be done, who signed, who approved, who looked the other way, because the structure of power made it feel untouchable. But nothing is untouchable once it's written down. That's the mistake. Because words fade, conversations disappear, but documents remember everything, every date, every number, every deviation from what was supposed to happen. And right now, those documents are louder than any royal voice, which is why the atmosphere has shifted from confidence to calculation. Because now it's not about maintaining control, it's about containing fallout, deciding what can still be held together and what is already too far gone. And the most unsettling part, no one seems entirely sure where that line is anymore. Because Edward's position has changed, quietly but completely. He's no longer just part of the structure, he's now backed by something far stronger than position or title. He's backed by legal confirmation, by documented entitlement, by something that doesn't bend under pressure or tradition. And that changes the balance in ways that can't be undone with a statement or a ceremony. It creates leverage, and leverage inside a system that wasn't designed for it, that's where things get unpredictable. Because now, every future decision has to account for this moment. Every financial move has to pass through a new layer of scrutiny. Every assumption has to be checked twice. Not because people want to, but because they have to. Because the cost of not checking, it's already been revealed. And that revelation has consequences. Not loud ones, not immediate ones, but slow, spreading ones. The kind that move through relationships first, through trust, through the invisible agreements that used to hold everything together. Because once those agreements are broken, or even questioned, they don't come back the same. And that's where the real fracture begins. Not in the money, not in the documents, but in the trust that those things were being handled correctly. Because if that trust is gone, or even weakened, then everything else has to be rebuilt on something more rigid, more legal, more controlled. And that kind of structure doesn't feel like tradition anymore. It feels like surveillance, like caution, like a system watching itself because it no longer fully trusts itself. And that's not stability, that's containment. And the deeper you look, the more one detail refuses to sit quietly: the timing. Why now? Why this moment? Why allow this confirmation to surface when it could have remained buried just a little longer? Because timing like this isn't accidental. It's chosen, deliberately, carefully, almost surgically, which means someone decided this was the moment the truth could no longer stay hidden, or the moment it would have been impossible to keep hiding it. And those are two very different things. Because if it's the first, then this is strategy. But if it's the second, then something bigger is coming. Something that made holding the old narrative impossible. Something that forced this shift before something even more damaging surfaced. And that's the tension sitting underneath everything right now. Because no one knows which one it is. Not publicly. Not yet. But inside those rooms, behind those doors where conversations are quieter but far more intense, that question is already being asked. Over and over again. In different ways, with different implications. And every answer leads to the same uncomfortable realization: this isn't over. It can't be. Because one confirmation doesn't close a story like this, it opens it. It pulls at threads that were never meant to be pulled. It reveals edges that were never meant to be seen. And once those edges are visible, people start looking closer and closer, and closer, until eventually something else slips out, another detail, another document, another confirmation. And when that happens, this moment, the one that felt so explosive today, might start to look like just the beginning, because the system didn't just crack, it showed where it can crack again. And tonight, as everything goes quiet on the surface, that's the part no one can ignore anymore. The confirmation wasn't the shock.